So let's talk a little bit about why we're here. I think most of us know that this is probably the worst financial crisis since the Great Depression in 1920. So far to date, Fannie Mae has lost about $150 billion, and that number is growing. There's over $500 billion in commercial as well as unsecured debt that's also been lost. So how does that impact real estate appraisers? Again, we're like a really tiny group, but we're charged with valuing real property. And because it's such an important task, we are so regulated. So I put together just a list to give you an idea of how many people want us to behave. The lowest level is called use tax, and I think you hear that a lot from residential appraisers. Oh, we can't do that because it's against use tax. Use tax stands for the Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. It tells you how, or it sets forth the act of valuing real property, and it also tells you how to report real property. So how to put together a real estate appraisal report. That is the minimum standard for all licensed and certified real estate appraisers. Above that, there's federal law. The first was Title 11, which resulted in licensing of real estate appraisers, and that happened after the S&L crisis. Most recently, and what I'm here to talk about today, is Title 14, which is also known as the Dodd-Frank Wall Street Reform and the FINRA. Above that, there is interagency guidance or financial institution guidance. And that would be the FDIC, the OTS, the OCC, and above them is secondary market requirements, which you're also familiar with, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, and also private placement money, for instance, if you kept things in your portfolio. So let's focus in, and this is just a very, very light overview of the highlights of the Frank-Dodd bill. That passed last month, so in 2010. And basically, a lot of that information is just filtering out now. The first thing is it requires state oversight of the administration and enforcement of appraisals, which basically means the state is going to be responsible. No real big change because the state is supposed to be responsible now. Requires payment of customary and reasonable fees for appraisers. We're going to run some national surveys, and basically there is not going to be a discount for fees. I think locally fees for the 1004 probably run someplace between the mid-500s and the mid-750s, depending on what it is. There's also a carve-out for complex real estate appraisal, so that number can go up, for instance, if it's an oceanfront property or it's a house, say, in Hawaii Ridge. There requires registration of AMCs. For anybody who doesn't know, AMC stands for Appraisal Management Company, and they're like the third-party appraisal orders that sort of came out after or just around the time of HVCC. And the other thing is that they're going to require appraisal reviews to be performed by licensed and certified real estate appraisers. So that's another change that is coming about. The portion of the FINRA bill that relates directly to real estate appraisers is known as Section 129C, Unfair and Deceptive Practices. Not too many changes here. The first one says prohibits unfair or deceptive acts. Basically that translates to mortgage fraud. So we're all familiar with that. Provides for appraisal independence, prohibits appraisal pressure. I think that's HVCC, and we're all real familiar with that. There are exceptions. Basically, it's not as good as I think you're hoping, but it requires appraisers to consider appropriate property information, including additional comps, provide further explanation explanation of appraisers' value conclusions, and requires appraisers to collect errors. Or, again, it's not going to be as good as you hope.